Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this special edition on Palestine, where we're going to be focusing on issues surrounding the Palestinian conflict. Today, joining me is Yousha Tayob, attorney here in South Africa. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for the invitation.
You're most welcome, Mr. Tayob. An Al-Aqsa document has been opened here in South Africa. Could you share with us, with our viewers, what this pertains to? But in the beginning, if you could share with us, who has opened up this document and who is it addressed to?
Alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to the viewers. The document is identified as what we call the Al-Aqsa Docket, and because the current attack started in Al-Aqsa and then spread to Gaza, and because we already have what is called the Gaza Docket arising out of Cast Lead, we've simply termed this the Al-Aqsa Docket. But it is in fact a referral in terms of the Rome Statute, which South Africa adopted into our legislation post-1994 in order to comply with our international obligations to make the world a smaller place for war criminals, to give the ICC some teeth in countries in which it has jurisdiction. Surprisingly, and I've said this on other platforms before, the USA and Israel are not signatories to the Rome Statute for obvious reasons. In the current docket, the complainants are the Palestinian Solidarity Alliance, the Media Review Network, which are locally based South African organizations whose support for the Palestinian cause is well known. And the third complainant in the matter is Haider Eid. Haider Eid is he's a professor in Gaza, and he's a South African citizen, and is one of the jurisdictional elements which I'll get to later in this conversation. Who's a direct witness affected by the violence perpetrated on Gaza. So those are the three complainants, PSA, MRN, and Haider Eid. And the entity which we seek to charge is the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, his entire cabinet, all his soldiers and generals, and anyone who's serving in his army, including South Africans who we now know travel on South African or other European type passports to some destination other than occupied Palestine, and then take another flight from wherever they are into occupied Palestine and partake in active fighting for the. We have substantial evidence, and we'll continue to gather the evidence to ensure that these vile people are prosecuted for what they do to other Muslim people, our brothers and sisters. So those are the parties to the complaint. You have a complainant. In this case, we have three, and we have the victims who we will come to now, and we have the perpetrators who we want to become the accused in this docket. So that essentially is the position currently. Who have we delivered the docket to? Well, because the Rome Statute authorizes our government to receive it and the various organs of state, we've delivered it to the office of the state president. We've delivered it to the NDPP and National Director of Public Prosecutions, and the two branches representing them called the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit and the DPCI, the Priority Crimes, the Directorate Priority Crimes Unit. We've also then sent it directly to the Minister of Police, the SAPS, and we've sent it also to the office of the ICC, the International Criminal Court in The Hague, for them to attend to the matter. So we've already received, when we delivered the initial Gaza docket and subsequent dockets, I haven't had a really warm reception from the NDPP, and the delay in appointing an investigating officer and the like has always been delayed. But this time I was pleasantly surprised because by the time I'd phoned the official at the PCLU, he said to me they'd already appointed an investigating officer, and my docket would now be combined with that docket, because on the instruction of the state president's office, a docket had already been opened. So, yeah, pleasantly surprised, but that's it. We now have an investigating officer, and hopefully we will meet with him in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We also put this docket together in a substantial amount of haste, but we had enough information, we had enough evidence, and we've given the undertaking that as and when the evidence becomes available, we're going to supplement this affidavit and provide it to the state. But there's overwhelming evidence of what we call war crimes, which will probably bring me to the next topic that you want to address. So I think we've addressed by and large the theory. So just when you have a crime, and I did this the last time when I explained the Gaza docket, you have a victim. Somebody is a victim of a crime. In this case, the brothers and sisters in all of occupied Palestine have been bombed and shelled and shot at, and all these vile things that have been done to them. And within that structure, because there's this international capacity to utilize the Rome Statute, we now utilize the Rome Statute using South African organizations to complain for and on behalf of the Palestinian victims. We depose to an affidavit, and we set out and we say on such and such a date, the following crime was committed. So if it was locally, and let's just take a housebreaking, somebody's house was broken into, things were stolen, somebody got hurt, Allah forbid, and the thieves got away, the homeowner or somebody in the house would go to the police station, file an affidavit, I live at such and such an address, at such and such a time, this happened to me, these were the goods that were stolen, these were the people that were assaulted, da-da-da-da-da. The police then assign a docket number to the matter, they appoint an investigating officer, and the investigating officer does his job and goes out and arrests the accused. The accused then get brought before a court, they get prosecuted and hopefully successfully convicted, and then they are sentenced. Similarly here, you have the Rome Statute that gives you jurisdiction on an international basis, because it's very difficult for someone who lives in the UK to come and report a crime that happened in the UK at a South African police station. It's just impossibility of performance of duties investigation. But what the Rome Statute does is it gives you feet and eyes and the ability to be able to chase potential accused in all countries of the world that are by and large signatories, and in some instances where you are not a signatory, where you can be pursued. So the MRN, the PSA, Haider Eid are now the complainants who've said, our house has been broken into, in the example that I shared with you. Yes. Our house has been broken into, this is what has happened, this is how it's occurred, this is how we've been affected, this is what we've lost, this is what they've done to us. And we now put that in the form of an affidavit. So the bombings, the white phosphorus, the nail bombs, the drones, all these attacks, everything that we've been witnessing for the last few days on the attacks on Gaza, we now have that evidence. We put it into an affidavit, and we take this affidavit and we say to the prosecutor at the NDPP, we believe crimes have been committed in terms of the Rome Statute, because these are specifically defined as war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and the like within those definitions. So we set it out and we say, here's the evidence for it. So here's proof that a bomb dropped on this place. Here's what they utilized. Here's who was killed. This is why it constitutes a war crime. So we've now identified the accuser and the accused. And we set out what we believe to be the crimes, and there are a number of them, which we'll go through when we go through the affidavit. So that's by and large in a nutshell. I hope I'm not coming across too confusingly. It's not really complex, but it's difficult to explain. Because the Rome Statute is just an international instrument that we can utilize to prosecute crimes committed anywhere in the world, provided we can establish jurisdiction and interest in the matter.
And Mr. Tayob, when was this Rome Statute, when did it come to see a surface?
The Rome Statute was in implementation since 1997. We adopted it into our South African law. Sorry, I was just looking for a copy there. My apologies. I thought I had a copy on my table. If I'm not mistaken, it was 1997. So it was definitely post 1994.
Yes.
I think I do quote it here. 1998. Sorry, there we go. July 1998.
1998.
So that came into operation in 1998. And we utilized it arising out of caste lead in 2008, 2009. You will have remembered that quite recently, the prosecutor of the ICC sought the permission of the chamber to continue to investigate complaints arising out of Palestine. And so what essentially happened there was, in January 2015, Palestine sought to be admitted as a state party, and that approval and payment of the required fees was effected by April 2015.
Okay.
And so the ruling at the ICC is that yes, it's a fully fledged member, and the prosecutor was instructed to continue investigating and prosecuting the dockets referred on Palestine to the ICC.
Mr. Tayob, I'd like you to just hold that thought for a few minutes. We're just going to take a quick ad break, and we'll come back to that just after this quick ad break. Welcome back to this special edition on Palestine. Joining me today is attorney Yousha Tayob, who is unpacking the Al-Aqsa document that has been opened up. It was opened up on the 20th of May here in South Africa. Mr. Tayob, early on, before the ad break, you were talking about the Rome Statute and what authorities it gives us here in South Africa. Could you just unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, sure. So that's the document I thought I had. I now found it. We adopted it into South Africa. It was adopted at the UN in 1998 out of the ICC, and we adopted it into our legislation in approximately 2002. There are attempts to get out of it because it had certain implications recently for South Africa, but those attempts were unsuccessful. So just to read the preamble, and I'll read it slowly for you so that you understand what the purpose of this act is, because that preamble to the act kind of sets out the basis on which we are entitled to take the action we're taking. So the act and the preamble to provide for a framework to ensure the effective implementation of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in South Africa, to ensure that South Africa conforms with its obligations set out in the statute, to provide for the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes, to provide for the prosecution in South African courts of persons accused of having committed the said crimes, so that's the genocide, the war crimes, the crimes against humanity, in South Africa and beyond the borders of South Africa in certain circumstances, to provide for the arrest of persons accused of having committed the said crimes and their surrender to the said court in certain circumstances, to provide for cooperation by South Africa with the said court, and the reference to court here is the International Criminal Court, and to provide for matters connected therewith. Just going on the preamble, they talk about a recognition, mindful, so we come from the South African reference, mindful that throughout the history of humankind, millions of children, women and men have suffered as a result of atrocities which constitute the crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression in terms of international law. The Republic of South Africa, which with its own history of atrocities has since 1994 become an integral and accepted member of the community of nations. the Republic of South Africa is committed to bringing persons who commit such atrocities to justice, either in a court of law of the Republic in terms of its domestic laws where possible, pursuant to its international obligations to do so when the Republic became a party to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, or in the event of the National Prosecuting Authority of the Republic declining or being unable to do so, in line with the principle of complementarity as contemplated in the statute, in the International Criminal Court created and functioning in terms of the said statute, and to carry out its other obligations. Now, I can read and I can take you to specific sessions which allow us to prosecute sitting heads of state, but that's too much detail to deal with immediately. What happened was in January 2015, Palestine applied to become a member party to the ICC, and that was concluded in April 2015, and the prosecutor of the ICC has now been instructed to investigate all referrals from Palestine in regard to crimes committed in terms of prosecutable offenses by the ICC. When we contacted the prosecutor recently regarding the Gaza docket of 2008 and 2009, they indicated that they would look at that, but it wouldn't be prosecutable because of the date of admission of Palestine as a member state in 2015. And so that portion of the docket, we hope the evidence will be utilized that we've provided. I mean, we know how horrific that attack also was. But in addition to that, the foreign accused, the 73 South Africans whom we've identified, can be locally prosecuted, and we are actively pursuing that in order to ensure that these 73 South Africans who went and served in the IDF in some way or the other, and hopefully we'll find more, are prosecuted for their participation in the activities of the IDF and in the furtherance of the Jewish interest in occupied Palestine.
Mr. Tayob, I understand that it's obviously confidential, but I just want to know, in terms of the 75 people that you have identified who have gone off from South Africa, will you be providing those details to the South African authorities?
Already have been provided. We picked up a bit of laziness from the investigating officer. We're putting measures in place to ensure that it is pursued, and very happy to share that information with ITV and show you their own profiles, where they admit proudly to killing Muslims in Gaza and West Bank and participating with the IDF in some way. In fact, a lot of the pictures, they dance and sing with both the South African and Israeli flags in their hands. And then posting pictures of how good they feel about it. Shocking, sick, absolutely sick.
So earlier you were talking about the Rome Statute.
Yeah, so I gave you the preamble,
yes.
and in essence, I mean, the preamble kind of says it all. So if we look at the objects of the act and the definitions, you're going to find our problem pretty boring. Needless to say, I mean, maybe only to say that a South African court is entitled to establish a jurisdiction in terms of Section 4, which allows us to prosecute heads of state. So it doesn't matter that someone is a prime minister or a president or a head of state. In terms of the law, we are entitled to prosecute such person. And if we take it historically, I don't know if viewers will remember, but when we lodged the Gaza docket many years ago, we managed to stop the then Labour Minister of the Israeli Parliament, Tzipi Livni, who cancelled her trip because of the docket. Subsequently, we also brought a docket in terms of the Rome Statute against the rogue Sisi from Egypt, and he also cancelled his trip. And when the BRICS summit was taking place in our country, we lodged a similar docket against Modi, and in fact, numerous international efforts were made to restore the BRICS summit as a result of the docket, because Modi had indicated every intention to cancel. And then four local South African organizations took it upon themselves to act upon the women fancy of the state and labeled those who were not supporting the BRICS summit as non-Muslim. In fact, there's a flyer that I carry in my pocket in which we are labeled, where they say we, the Muslims of South Africa, denouncing that we may. So when they want to condemn people making takfir and the like, they've already made it upon us. So it's very personal that I don't want to get into that right now. But we've used the docket effectively to at least stop Tzipi Livni and Sisi from traveling to this country. And had it gone all our way, Modi also wouldn't have come. And to whatever extent the BRICS summit was derailed, so be it. That is our position. And subsequent to BRICS, we've seen the horror in Kashmir. We did do a complaint in respect of the Kashmiri Action Group with Salman Khan, but we haven't finalized the entire docket because we're still waiting for some information to come out of Kashmir. The lawyer we did work with at the time was unfortunately killed, and his replacement has not yet been found by the people we're working with. So hopefully that Modi docket will still be pursued as well. But clearly the dockets have had the desired effect in stopping at least Livni and Sisi from traveling here. And so one of the purposes of this docket is that anybody who is with Netanyahu, anyone who we can identify as one of his ministers or soldiers, and they wish to travel to a country where the Rome Statute is in application, this order can then be utilized to arrest them and prosecute them, hopefully.
And what's the normal turnaround time in regards to the Rome Statute that South African authorities have to respond to?
So there's no given time. What they've got to do is they've got to consider the docket. And if they believe that they can constitute a court, being a branch of the ICC, then that is what they must do. So they will set up a court in the country, appoint a judge who will preside in the matter, appoint a prosecutor who will, and proceed to try and obtain the presence of the accused, with or without the accused, run the trial, make a finding, and hopefully issue a warrant once the evidence is presented. So there's no real timing. The Act doesn't prescribe a timing, but it simply says you have the right to do this. And if you don't want to do this, South Africa, then if you believe there's sufficient evidence, onward refer it to the ICC in The Hague and let them now, where they've already constituted the court, proceed with examining the evidence and doing what they believe best to do with the evidence.
So just so I understand it better, we have to first begin here in South Africa with the court proceedings, and then from there it gets taken to the ICC.
No, so South Africa has the right to prosecute the crime locally. It is given that jurisdiction. Right. It can establish a court. As a signatory to the ICC, it can establish a court in South Africa to prosecute these crimes. If it does so, it will follow the normal rules of procedure where a court is established, prosecutor, judge, evidence presented and a finding made. And if it did not want to do that, if it did not want to constitute the court, it then at its absolute minimum has the obligation of referring the complaint to the ICC for investigation, prosecution, conviction, and sanction.
Okay. Mr. Tayob, we're just going to have a short ad break, and we'll be back with more information just after this ad break. Welcome back. Joining me on this special edition about Palestine is attorney Yousha Tayob from South Africa. Mr. Tayob, earlier on you were talking about the charges and the request. Could you just give us more information about the charge and the request and the purpose of this docket?
All right. So like I said to you, it contains evidence about crimes. And it's crimes against humanity, genocide, war crimes, and the like, ethnic cleansing and everything else. So the purpose of putting together the docket was to say, this is our complaint. These are the crimes that have been committed. Please, will you now, NDPP, open a docket? Once you've opened a docket, assign an investigating officer, give it a case number, and then begin to employ all the means necessary to investigate these crimes. So all of that has now been done. A complaint has been lodged, complainants identified, victims identified, accused people identified. The authority in this instance is the National Directorate of Public Prosecutions, represented by its various branches. And then they go on to refer the matter to the SAPS. So we understand now from the NDPP that we sent them the complaint. They've appointed an investigating officer. A docket has been opened. They will furnish me with the case number. And then that case number will be utilized to further the investigation, whether the police need information from us, whether we have additional information to give to them as it comes through. And jointly, we will assist the police and the NDPP and whoever else is appointed to investigate and hopefully establish the court or onward refer this matter to the ICC for the legal process to take its course in the form of presenting of evidence, prosecution, conviction, and hopefully sentencing of sorts.
So in terms of jurisdictions, can you share with us what our jurisdiction is?
Okay, so like I said to you, one of the jurisdictional requirements is that because we're a signatory to the Rome Statute, we bring ourselves into it. Two, we have a South African who is affected by it, which is Haider Eid. You also have a number of international instruments that we utilize in matters such as these, your UN Charter of Human Rights, your Geneva Conventions, your Nuremberg Principles, your Black Law Statutes. All of them now come into play because the ICC and these other instruments of universal jurisdiction allow you to prosecute these crimes. So if you for instance just look at the affidavit, and I'm not sure how many people have access to it, but we will make sure that it is placed on our website. It's a number of laws that say to us what these Jews are doing is just wrong. And it's wrong for a number of reasons. It completely violates all rights, laws of war, human rights, whatever those are. And these are the secular principles that I talk about. So these are the types of legislation that permit us to challenge the actions being committed by these Jewish zealots.
I'm looking at point 49. I'm looking at point 49 in the document. It says Article 129.3 of the Third Geneva Convention clearly indicates that all member states shall take measures necessary for the suppression of all acts contrary to the provisions of the present convention other than the grave breaches. How does that incorporate other countries and involve them?
Yes, so look, anybody who's a signatory too, so to the extent that we rely on the Rome Statute, any country, and if I'm not mistaken, there are 84 signatories to the Rome Statute. Notably, as I said earlier, Israel and the USA are not signatories to the Rome Statute for obvious reasons. But their presidents and the members of their parliaments can be affected by this legislation because it allows a prosecution of those who don't entirely subscribe to the statute as well. So, yeah, look, I mean, ultimately 49, if I'm not mistaken, the first two, the Geneva Conventions. I'll just remind myself. Yeah, so these are what we call the instruments of of international legislation that were adopted. And we all know that insofar as Palestine is concerned, there are a number of UN resolutions. I mean, the last count was 280 or resolution 280 or 290, but none of them get implemented. So you get this legislation and the UN makes the declaration, but there's no teeth to implement it. So, we're hoping that through the Rome Statute, that we're giving the teeth for implementation, and certainly it's had its desired effect insofar as Livni and Sisi and could have helped, could have been done with Modi, but yeah, we failed at the last leg.
And looking at the constitution, South Africa's constitution, how do we associate the Al-Aqsa Docket with the constitution? What's our jurisdiction there?
Yeah, so like I said, when I read the preamble to the Rome Statute earlier, it indicated that South Africa, having considered its atrocities and its intention to perform its international obligations against these type of atrocities ever happening again, is already the basis on which we're in, because the Rome Statute was signed into our law in 2002 when we undertook to implement the laws of the ICC per the Rome Act in our local legislation. And you heard from the preamble that that's what we want to stop: women, men, children being abused and violated in these very ways. So, particularly in our constitution, I mean, we have a provision that says we will comply with international agreements, and we'll apply customary international law, which is your UN Charter on Human Rights, your Geneva Conventions, your Nuremberg Principles, your Black Law Statutes, and we also say that we will apply international law in our constitution. So the jurisdictional grounds for us are established. Hayden Eid is there. We're an interest group. Well, the clients are an interest group, and they're entitled to seek the enforcement of this legislation. So I have no doubt that both from a jurisdictional point of view and our constitution, the jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute these crimes is already established. In fact, in the previous visits that we've had to do to the NDPP, it's taken a little while to get the meeting going and to get an investigating officer appointed. And like I said to you, this time I was very pleasantly surprised, because by the time I called the prosecutor, I think he was already waiting for my call, and he'd already had an investigating officer to appoint in mind, even prior to the delivery of the email on the 20th of May.
You talk about the right to life in the document. Can you share with us more about this aspect here?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Please repeat your question. I didn't hear you.
In your docket, you mentioned the right to life, and you mentioned the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In terms of the docket and why was this specifically mentioned in the docket? Can you share with us that?
Okay, so one of the main the right to life is at the absolute heart of this complaint. And it's the loss of life. I mean, we deal with injuries and displacement and other issues later in the docket, but the right to life, as established by the various international instruments, is the most significant. That no one has the right to take another's life. And so this is completely at the heart of this complaint, is that the effects of this violence has been and always will be that people will die. And we say that no power other than God has the right to take life. And obviously by Sharia judicial processes. But I mean, it's the time for this conversation is limited, so I can't deal with that entirely. But the right to life is inherent. It's the ultimate sacrifice that anybody can make, and that's established by what we say in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The right to life is the most significant. That no one has the right to take it, and like we say, that's the heart of this complaint, is that you've taken lives.
You mentioned Haider Eid earlier on, Mr. Tayob. In terms of Haider, he's still in Palestine at the moment. How is his safety at the moment?
Yeah, so look, just insofar as concerned, I don't have direct contact with Haider Eid myself. And another attorney in the Muslim Lawyers Association was assisting in gathering this evidence. But in the gathering of the evidence, there were times when we had contact, then you lost contact, whether it was telephonic or email. It was haphazard. It wasn't stable, and she had substantial difficulty in collating what she needed to collate over a period of 2-3 days. But the area in which he was in had network, didn't have network, came under bombardment. You could hear, she could hear some noises on bombing when they spoke, but it was by and large electronic communication to get the information. So we've all seen the pictures. I can't. On the last occasion in the 2008 and 2009, Haider confirmed that the building right next to him had been bombed and his windows had shattered and the like. But we've seen the stories and more evidence is coming. So inshallah he's safe, but the devastation that has been caused is unfortunately shocking. Yeah. So I hope, the fact that we still got contact with him hopefully means that he's alive. But we haven't had since the 20th of May once we secured the affidavit. So I don't think that anybody in the team has spoken to him since. But prior to the 20th of May, for at least 2 days, we had off and on contact with Haider.
Alhamdulillah, that's good to know. Mr. Tayob, we're going to come back to you just after this quick, short ad break, inshallah. Welcome back. Joining me today to discuss the Al-Aqsa Docket that was opened on the 20th of May here in South Africa is attorney Yousha Tayob. Mr. Tayob, we've been unpacking the docket from the beginning, and there's a part in it that talks about the laws of war. Could you share with us what that pertains to?
Yeah, so essentially what the UN Charter does is it recognizes that there will be conflict in areas in the world at some point in time. And what it does is it regulates what should happen, when some country attacks another country, and it sets out the parameters of the dispute. But like we said earlier, UN really a toothless body to enforce. In fact, unfortunately, UN soldiers accused of heinous crimes in many parts of the world themselves. But in essence, the UN Charter does make provision of the rules of engagement in a war situation. I think there's an and obviously it caters also for the right to self-defense. If I just look at the Charter on Article 2, it simply says that all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purpose of the United Nations. So it's as broad as they come, but I mean we've all witnessed that the UN really is a toothless body, but it does give room for these international politicians to try and do something. We've seen 14 days of attack on Gaza, and nothing real happened. Whether it was from the UN and that part of the world, and in fact the Muslim world completely impotent in trying to do anything. So these are rules written on paper, and they're there, and we've quoted them in the docket because we're required to quote them, so they're there. They're really toothless, useless provisions.
And in terms of South Africa's position, can you share information about South Africa's position?
Yeah, so look, I mean, there's been a strong call. I mean, the President's office has issued a strong statement condemning the violence. But, you know, the reality in all of this is that actions speak louder than words. So, you know, we know that they continue to do trade with Israel. We know that they continue to be diplomatic relations. You know, everybody continuously quotes this line that, you know, that we are not free until the Palestinians are free. But what efforts were made? What efforts were made to secure Palestinian freedom? You know, even till today, I'm involved with groups trying to secure visa-free travel to South Africa for Palestinians. So if you believe that the freedom of the Palestinians was significant, why do they still need to apply for visas to come to this country? Why do Israelis travel freely to this country without the need for visas? Actions speak louder than words, and unfortunately, all we're getting is words. And I'm going to actively get involved with a group of people post the launch of this docket to ensure that Israelis now need visas to travel to this country and Palestinians don't. But I mean, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's time for South Africa to get its army and its jets and its soldiers ready and get to Gaza, because Muslim countries don't want to do it. And maybe with this insistence that South Africans cannot be free without Palestinians being free, then maybe we can mobilize to get our army and navy and everybody else, and let's put all those words into action and get this thing sorted out once and for all.
On this note, what else would you like to see from the South African government and from people here in South Africa?
Well, so look, I mean, we know to some extent that economic sanctions, when we struggled with apartheid South Africa, was certainly helpful. So those economic sanctions and boycott campaigns, some sort of military jihad action certainly needs to happen. And also, I mean, you know, the complete cutting of not just diplomatic political ties, but also complete economic and political relations to cease. Why an organization like the South African Zionist Federation is allowed to even exist in South Africa completely amazes me. They should be prosecuted by the standard on which we allowed ourselves to be judged post-1994. They shouldn't even be allowed to exist. They should not be allowed to have premises. They should not be allowed to earn money. They should not be allowed to generate money. They should simply not be allowed to exist. And we've clearly established that apartheid is a war crime. I don't make the distinction between Jews and Zionists. But the point quite simply is they perpetuating an apartheid ideology through Zionism. And that is a crime that we've survived. But how can you issue statements condemning bombings in Gaza when you allow the actual perpetrators and funders to continue to operate in South Africa? They should be prosecuted. They shouldn't be allowed to exist. The businesses that they generate, I mean, I've seen a few come across this weekend, Cape Union Mart, Trident Miller, Poetry, what's this famous coffee fellow, Starbucks. Chelsea Football Club. I mean, we should ban the viewing of Chelsea games based on what Abramovich is actively doing in supporting the IDF in the killing of our Muslim brothers and sisters. So all these organizations, the Zionist Federation, raise money and consciousness to kill our brothers and sisters, yet they're allowed to exist in this country. When the preamble to the act talks about these atrocities having been committed against us, but you're allowing them to continue. You need to ban them. You need to make sure they don't exist. They're not allowed to perpetuate this apartheid ideology. And the obligations on Muslims is even bigger from a jihad perspective, insofar as the existence of organizations and people like this are concerned.
Mr. Tayob, there's so much that I'd like to ask you in terms of the Al-Aqsa Docket, but however, we've run out of time, so inshallah, maybe we can discuss again in the next coming days. We can unpack this docket more intensely, inshallah.
Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. In conclusion to today's segment, we managed to cross over to Palestine, to Sister Abir. Sister Abir, can you hear me?
Yes.
This was earlier today, so Sister Abir, can you tell us more or less what's the situation on the ground today in Palestine?
As you see, Al-Aqsa Mosque is the Dhuhr time, but even that, there is not a lot of people inside the mosque. In the last few days, there was arresting, shooting, abandoning for people from being in Al-Aqsa. A lot of people had been abandoned just yesterday. There was more than 20 persons, mainly women, was abandoned from being inside the mosque anymore. Most of them are abandoned for 6 months. Some we does not till when the abandoning will be in. Of course, this abandoning and arresting and shooting that was happening to the people here, it's mainly because they want the Al-Aqsa to be empty like this, as you see.
So why is that?
Because they want the mosque to be empty for the settlers, to the Zionists, to attack it and pray inside and use it at morning, especially for praying. So they put a lot of things for the people, especially the youth, to come to the mosque. Even the worker inside the mosque, some of them are abandoning from being inside the mosque, some already in jail, some had been shooting. So this is happening again. They choose people who especially been at morning, and they give them abandoning from being in the mosque. Some people had been taking abandoning for 6 months. Some people had been taking a temporary banding for a week, and that they're supposed to go back to the police after a week. So we are expecting these people to take also 6 month banding from entering the mosque. Some people now, it's almost 1 year or 2 years they are abandoning from entering the mosque. So it's a kind of punishment that they give it to each one who try to stand, to speak, to take a picture for the settlers, for the Zionists inside the mosque and what they are doing inside the mosque.
So what's the reason behind the ban?
Mainly is to make, as we said, it's a kind of punishment. The main reason for this punishment is to keep the mosque empty of youth of Palestinian, so they will not be able to protect the mosque. So the mosque will be empty for Zionists, so they can able to control it and to demolish the Dome of the Rock, to demolish the building and to take the place. So this is the main goal for them, and this is what they are working for.
And in terms of the age of the youth that have been affected by the ban, what are the age?
It's between 18 and 30.
So why this specific age category?
because these normally the category that they fight more, that they stand more. But for example, yesterday, all the people who under 45, it was not allowed for them to enter to the mosque. So all the people who was under 45, especially from men yesterday, they was abandoned. Each time they abandon is depend on what they are seeing from the people. For example, if they notice that there is a lot of women, they will abandon the women. If they notice that old men are also involved, they will abandon the men. So it depends on what is going on the mosque. The main thing is to punish the people so they will be afraid from coming to the mosque, and in this way they will keep the mosque empty from Muslims.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for your time today, Sister Abir. Inshallah, Allah keep you safe and take care.
Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, my sister. That was Sister Abir, who's giving us information on the ground earlier today about what was happening in front of the Dome of the Rock today. Inshallah, we will have more information for you in the coming days.